We've all seen those amazing AI-generated images, right? But getting really high resolution, especially with certain types of AI, well, that's been a tough nut to crack.
Definitely. Autoregressive models, specifically. They build images piece by piece, sequentially.
Like brick by brick, yeah.
Exactly. And for big images, that means a ton of bricks. It gets incredibly computationally expensive, really limits the size you can realistically make.
So today we're diving into something new that's trying to change that, a method called token shuffle.
That's right. We've been looking at the research notes, the paper itself. It's called token-unshuffle, towards high-resolution image generation with autoregressive models.
And our mission, yours and mine, is to really unpack this. What makes token shuffle tick? What are the actual innovations here? And, why is it causing a stir?
hmm We want to give you that shortcut to understanding what's happening at the cutting edge here.
Think of it as getting the key insights, those aha moments, without wading through all the dense research yourself. Ready to jump in.
Let's do it. Maybe start with why these autoregressive models struggle so much with high-res stuff in the first place.
Good idea. So lay it out for us. What's the fundamental problem?
It really boils down to the tokens. How images get represented, see text, you could say a lot with relatively few tokens, right?
Sure.
Images, especially detailed ones, need way more. Think about a 1024 by 1024 picture. That translates to something like 4,000 visual tokens.
4,000? Okay.
Now jump to 2048 by 2048, you're looking at roughly 16,000 tokens.
Whoa. 16,000. That's a huge jump.
It's massive. And here's the kicker. The models we use, transformers mostly, their computational needs scales quadratically with that number.
Quadratically. So not just 4 times harder, but like 16 times harder.
Exactly. The cost just explodes. Training takes forever. Inference takes forever. It becomes almost impractical. That's the bottleneck.
Okay, so that sets the stage. Huge number of tokens, quadratic scaling, a real wall. What's the big idea behind token shuffle then? Their aha moment.
The core insight, and this is pretty clever, is what they call dimensional redundancy.
Dimensional redundancy. Okay, what does that mean in this context?
It's about how these multimodal large language models, MLMs, handle visual information. They often take visual features, which might be relatively low dimensional,
Uh-huh.
and map them into the model's language space, which is usually very high dimensional.
Ah, so you're saying there's wasted space, essentially. The visual info isn't efficiently using all those dimensions.
Precisely. They actually did studies showing you could compress the dimensionality of these visual codes, sometimes by like a factor of 8.
8 times?
Yeah, with barely any hit to the actual image quality you perceive. It suggests a lot of that high dimensional space isn't strictly necessary for just representing the visual stuff.
Okay, that's really interesting. So they found this inefficiency. How does token shuffle actually use that insight? What are the mechanics?
Right, so they introduced two key operations, token shuffle and token unshuffle.
Catch-all names.
Yeah. So token shuffle, what it does is it takes nearby tokens, spatially local ones, and merges them together along their channel dimension, kind of fuses them.
Before they go into the main transformer part?
Exactly. So instead of feeding in, say, 4 separate tokens from a little 2x2 pack, you feed in one combined token.
I see. So you're immediately reducing the number of things the transformer has to look at.
Dramatically. That 2x2 shuffle window, it cuts the token count by about 75%.
75%. That's huge.
It is. And they mention it's inspired by pixel shuffle, which is used in super resolution, but applied here to these visual tokens.
Okay, so that's the shuffle part. What about the unshuffle?
That's the reverse operation, basically. After the transformer does its thing, predicts the next fused token.
Uh-huh.
The token unshuffle step takes that output and carefully pulls the original tokens back apart, putting them back in their correct spatial spots to form the final image.
Got it. So shuffle to compress, process the compressed version, then unshuffle to reconstruct.
Exactly. And importantly, this whole process still fits within the standard way these models work, predicting the next token. Plus, it doesn't need a separate text encoder bolted on, which is nice.
Keeps things simpler. And this whole shuffle-unshuffle dance, this is what let them break that resolution barrier.
That's the key outcome. They demonstrated text-to-image generation using this autoregressive approach at 2048 by 2048 resolution.
That's a first for AR models, right?
Absolutely a first, a pretty significant milestone.
Wow. Okay, so groundbreaking stuff for AR. How does it actually perform, like compared to other models out there? Any numbers?
Yeah, the results look pretty strong. They tested it on a benchmark called GenAI-benchmark using some tough prompts.
Okay.
Their 2.7 billion parameter token shuffle model scored 0.77 on something called a VQAS score. Now, just a number doesn't mean much, but compare it.
Right, context.
It beat another AR model, Llama again, by 0.18 points, which is quite a bit. And maybe more surprisingly, it even beat LDM, which is a diffusion model, by 0.15 on those same hard prompts.
Beat a diffusion model. Okay, that is noteworthy. What about, how the images actually look? Did people prefer them?
They did evaluations too. And yeah, compared to other AR models like Llamagan or Illumina MGPT, people felt Token Shuffle did better on text alignment, how well the image matched the prompt.
That's crucial.
Definitely. And fewer visual flaws, better overall appearance. Interestingly, they said the visual flaw rate was actually comparable to the LDM diffusion model.
Comparable to LBM. So it's not just catching up to other AR models, it's actually competitive with diffusion in some aspects.
Seems that way, at least in these evaluations.
Now, I remember seeing a point about comparing this to just using a really high compression VQ GAN at the start. Why is token shuffle better than just squishing the image more initially?
That's a really good question because, yeah, you could just use a VQ GAN that compresses more aggressively to get fewer tokens.
Right. Seems simpler.
But the problem is, if you compress too much with the VQ GAN itself, the quality of the reconstruction suffers. You lose detail before you even start generating.
Ah, so you damage the source material in a way.
Exactly. Token shuffle, because it operates after the initial tokenization, seems to preserve details better and leads to better overall generation performance. Plus, you can change the shuffle window size to control the compression level dynamically.
Right, it's adjustable, not just one fixed high compression rate.
Precisely. More flexibility.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's talk efficiency again. You mentioned the quadratic scaling benefit. Can you break down what that means practically, like speed?
Sure. So that 2x2 shuffle window we talked about, it doesn't just reduce the token count by 4 times, it also reduces the computational load, the FLPs, by roughly 4 times.
Okay, 4 times fewer calculations.
Roughly, yes. And during inference, when you're actually generating an image, because of how techniques like KV caching work, the speed up you see tends to scale more linearly with that token reduction.
So faster generation times.
Definitely faster, a significant efficiency boost, which is vital if you want to actually use these models.
No kidding. But getting it to work at 2048 by 2048, that couldn't have been easy. Did they run into training problems?
Oh, absolutely. They mentioned specifically that training at that scale was unstable.
How so? Like, what happens?
The loss, the measure of error the model is making, and the gradients which guide the learning, they would just suddenly shoot up unexpectedly. Things kind of explode. It's a known issue when you push models this hard.
Right, training instability. How did they fix that? What was the trick?
They used a couple of smart techniques together. One was QK norm. It's a specific type of normalization applied inside the attention mechanism of the transformer.
Okay.
And they also added something called a Z-loss to the training objective. Using these two in combination apparently did the job, stabilized the training even at that really high resolution.
Huh. Clever engineering needed there. You also mentioned something about a new scheduler for CFG during inference. What's CFG again and why a new scheduler?
Right, CFG is classifier-free guidance. It's a common trick to make generated images match the text prompt better and just generally look higher quality.
Okay. So why change how it works?
Well, CFG was mostly developed for diffusion models. Autoregressive models generate images differently, right? Token by token, sequentially.
Yeah, one piece at a time.
So the researchers figured that how CFG influences the generation might need adjustment for AR. Specifically, they worried about the influence of the unconditional prediction the models guess without text guidance on the very first few tokens being generated.
Why are the first few tokens so important?
Because in AR models, errors made early on can cascade and mess up the whole image later. So they introduced a new scheduler, a half-linear one, to carefully control the CFG strength.
How does it control it?
It basically dials down the influence of that unconditional guidance on the initial tokens, letting the text prompt have more say early on, and then ramps it up later. This seemed to reduce artifacts and improve quality.
Interesting. So fine-tuning the guidance signal based on when in the sequence a token is generated?
Exactly. A subtle tweak, but apparently effective for AR models.
Going back to the shuffle window size, we know bigger means more efficiency, but what's the trade-off for image quality? Is bigger always better?
Not necessarily. There's a balance. A larger window, say 4x4 instead of 2x2, means even more efficiency.
Right.
But because each fused token now covers a larger area, you might lose some very fine-grained detail. The potential for quality could slightly decrease.
So there's a sweet spot.
It seems so. The paper suggests that smaller sizes, like 1x1, which is basically no shuffling, just using their other improvements, or 2x2, gave really excellent quality while still providing significant efficiency wins.
Okay, so you choose based on whether you prioritize maximum speed or maximum fidelity.
Pretty much.
So looking forward, token shuffle sounds great, but what are the downsides? Are there still limitations, and where does the research go next?
Yeah, it's definitely not perfect. The authors acknowledge that AR models, even with token shuffle, can still sometimes produce images with weird visual flaws or inconsistencies.
Why is that?
It's largely down to that causal masking inherent in AR models. Each token prediction only looks backwards at previous tokens, not forwards or globally. So sometimes it can lose the plot on the bigger picture structure.
Right, it lacks that global view during generation.
Exactly. So future work, they're talking about scaling this up to even bigger language models like 7 billion or 30 billion parameters.
Bigger models, maybe better results.
Potentially, yeah. Also making it work with different image sizes and aspect ratios more flexibly. And they mentioned another interesting research direction called RR,
R.
randomized autoregressive visual generation. The idea there is to try and introduce more global interactions even within that next token prediction setup, which could help with those consistency issues.
Lots still to explore then. Okay, let's maybe wrap up with a quick recap for everyone listening. What are the absolute key takeaways from Token Shuffle?
Sure. So number one, the core idea is the token shuffle and unshuffle operations.
Right, fusing and unfusing tokens,
Yeah, and that works by exploiting this dimensional redundancy they found in how visual stuff is coded, reduces the token count massively.
which leads to
Point two, enabling 2048 by 2048 image generation with an autoregressive model for the very first time. That's the big headline result.
a major milestone.
Definitely. Third, the performance is strong. It beats other AR models and is even competitive with or beats diffusion models like LDM on some benchmarks and human evaluations.
And they had some clever tricks for training, too.
Right. Point four, they tackled training instability at high resolutions using QK norm and ZLOS. And point five, they improved inference quality with that new CFG scheduler tailored for AR generation.
So a whole package of innovations, really. And why should you, listening right now, care about this?
Well, it's a big step towards making high-resolution AI image generation more efficient, particularly within that autoregressive framework. AR models have some nice properties, especially for building unified systems that handle text, images, maybe audio altogether.
So this makes them more viable for those really high-quality image tasks.
Exactly. Opens up possibilities.
And maybe the most memorable bit, first AR model ever to hit 2048 by 2048, and beating diffusion models sometime, that really stucks.
It's definitely the attention grab. If you want to dig deeper, check out the actual token shuffle paper, maybe look into related things like Llamagan, LDM, even the original pixel shuffle idea. It makes you think about where this could lead.
Right. Which brings us to a final thought to leave you with. We've seen Token Shuffle make AR models contenders at high resolution by cleverly managing tokens. Could this be the start? Could AR models, using tricks like this, eventually become the preferred way to generate super high-res images, maybe especially in those big multimodal AIs?
Or maybe just thinking about that core idea, finding and exploiting redundancy. It worked really well here for images. Makes you wonder where else in AI are there hidden inefficiencies like that, just waiting for a clever shuffle.
Food for thought. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Token Shuffle.
Yeah, thanks for listening.